The Favorite is a 2018 film. It's a biographic movie as well as a drama and sort of a dark comedy as well. This movie has lots of Oscar buzz and it currently has 5 Golden Globe nominations, 1 for Best Picture for a comedy or musical, 1 screenplay nomination, as well as 3 acting nominations for our 3 female lead actresses. This movie is based on a true story set in 1708 about Queen Anne of England. Queen Anne was very erratic. She would often get angry at times for no reason. She had gout. She was very sickly. She often worried that nobody ever truly loved her. She had very little interest in governing her kingdom and spent most of her time on eccentric activities such as racing lobsters and playing with her 17 rabbits. So she delegated most of the responsibility of actually ruling England to her favorite person in court, Lady Sarah, played by Rachel Weisz. Rachel Weisz really loves her position of power in the kingdom and how this favoritism with the queen helps her maintain that power. But then eventually Emma Stone's character gets thrown into the mix to come and live in the palace. She starts off as a lowly servant scrubbing the floor, but then eventually she works her way into the queen's favor, and Rachel Weisz and Emma Stone have to start competing and out-manipulating each other for the queen's affection and becoming the queen's favorite and all the power that comes with that, and that is where the true fun of the movie comes from. This movie is directed by Yorgos Lanthimos, and he directed 2015's The Lobster, which was a very eccentric and quirky movie. I didn't really dig it. It was a little bit too out there for me. That movie starred Colin Farrell, and it was basically set in this dystopian near future where single people that aren't in relationships by a certain age are forced to go live in this hotel, and if they don't find a romantic partner, they are then turned into an animal and sent to go live in the woods. In this case, Colin Farrell was going to be turned into a lobster.
Now, have you thought of what animal you'd like to be if you end up alone?
Yes, a lobster.
A lobster is an excellent choice.
That movie was too out there for me and not very user-friendly, and I think this movie is still very quirky, but it is a lot more approachable and a user-friendly movie that more people can get into. This movie was written by Deborah Davis and Tony McNamara, and it was a real passion project for these writers. Apparently, Deborah was working on this movie since 1998 and writing this screenplay, so it is always really interesting to see these passion projects that take decades to actually make it to film come to fruition eventually. Now we have a great female-driven cast in this movie. Olivia Colman is Queen Anne, and she has a Golden Globe nomination for Best Actress. She has played the Queen of England several times before. In 2012's Hyde Park on the Hudson, she played Queen Elizabeth. In Netflix's TV show The Crown, she plays Queen Elizabeth II, so she's great at playing the queen, although the particular queen she plays in this role is kind of different from her previous roles because Queen Anne is such an interesting, eccentric character. Rachel Weisz plays Sarah Churchill in this movie, and she is great as this woman that is trying to keep power. Emma Stone as this Abigail is also fantastic. Apparently Emma Stone spent a month with a dialect coach to learn that British accent of the 1700s, and Emma Stone does a great job in this movie as well. All 3 of these ladies have Golden Globe nominations for their role, and they really absolutely kill it in this movie. Most of the male roles in this film are not as important, but I also want to recommend Nicholas Hoult. Was great as this member of parliament, very pompous and eccentric himself. I really liked him in this film as well. For those of you trying to place where you recognize this guy from, he was in the Mad Max movie as one of those crazy people dressed all in white. So all in all, a very good cast in this film. First, on to the positives of this film. The set design is beautiful, seeing these castles and nature. The costumes are great. The outfits they all wore were very interesting. You have all of these British members of parliament with those wigs. You have the queen with her various outfits. Fantastic. The directing is great. The way everything is shot, the way the actresses' performances are captured. Amazing. This story itself is very fascinating. These 3 women affected the lives of millions of people with their struggles for power. It is really fun seeing Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz compete for the Queen's affection and trying to out-manipulate each other. Really fantastic stuff there. This movie also has a lot of lesbian stuff between the Queen and Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz, which adds another layer of complexity onto the plot. Apparently this lesbian content made the film very hard to get made. A lot of people didn't want to produce it because of that, but it is such an important part of the story, and it is great that the director and writers decided to go there. On to some of the negatives on this film, or some of the stuff I'm a little bit mixed on. This movie is very quirky and very much a dark comedy at many times. While I kind of loved some of that humor, I can definitely see some people being turned off to it. Some of the debauchery depicted of the royals is a little bit ridiculous, such as racing the ducks, although I thought it was fun, and as well as one scene where a whole bunch of members of parliament are throwing oranges at this naked man, and they are just having a ball at it. That was a little bit ridiculous as well, although maybe kind of fun, and maybe it was true that that did happen. The scenes where Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz are trying to out-manipulate each other eventually becomes very dark, and they become very cruel in their attacks on each other, and it becomes a little bit uncomfortable and unsettling to watch. So while it is very interesting, maybe a little bit disturbing at times. At one point, Emma Stone, kind of gleeful in her new power, starts crushing one of the Queen's rabbits just for pure enjoyment of hurting this animal and expressing her power over it, which I felt a little bit disturbing as well and not really needed. On to the ending of this film. Well, I totally get the message. I think some people might be a little bit thrown off at kind of the sudden ending of the film and the way the ending moments leave you feeling. So I'm a little mixed on the ending, although I think I kind of did like it in the end. This is not really a feel-good, happy ending kind of movie. It's not something like Green Book, which is very universally appealing to everybody. There are some people that will really not like this movie, but I think it is still a great movie, and you have to appreciate the art behind it, and it is very interesting and fun at times. So I'm going to give this film an 8.5 out of 10. It is a really good movie, and it definitely deserves some of the nominations it's getting, although I don't think it will necessarily win Best Picture or anything, but I think it definitely does deserve to be nominated, and is definitely worth checking out.